You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday, 5th of December 2014. Leicester City Council is banning all Israeli goods. Russell Brand wins Foot-in-Mouth Award for worst use of English language. British volunteers ground campaign against ISIS like trench warfare. French homeless in Marseille forced to wear yellow triangles. I can't charge my iPod. French jihadists complain about life in Islamic State. Sweden's right-wing anti-Muslim immigration party's actions could cause demise of leftist government. Australian PM blasts No Gender December. Australia, now that is what I call some serious vandalism at proposed mosque site. Thought for the day, the Treaty of Versailles yet again. And finally, animal jokes. UK news. Leicester City Council is banning all Israeli goods. The City Council of Leicester, the 10th largest city in the United Kingdom, has established a ban on all Israeli goods in the city, despite the fact that it is controlled by Britain's main opposition party Labour, who, according to party leader Ed Miliband, have insisted that they are opposed to boycotting. With a population of 330,000 citizens, 93,000 of whom are first or second generation immigrants from Pakistan, India and or Bangladesh, this can unfortunately be only deemed as a win for the BDS movement against Israel and a fearful premonition of what can transpire in other British cities around the UK. Some 60,000 of Leicester's residents, 19%, are Muslim. Currently just 295 Jews live in the area, representing a meagre 0.1% of the population. The resolution to ban all Israeli goods was proposed by Councillor Mohammed Dawood and approved by City Council on November 13th. The motion was founded on the statement that Leicester is renowned for its tolerance, diversity, unity and its strong stance against all forms of discrimination, which it noted enables different communities to live together. While the motion is clearly a slap to Israel's face, it's also one to the face of Miliband, who represents the city as a Labour spokesman and has frequently established that Labour does not support boycotts. They are not the answer and do not progress the cause of peace or help foster negotiations and dialogue. World at 8. And of course Miliband is the Jew himself. Knowing the Brits, they'll accept this form of pure hatred from Islam, whereas they can and do question perfectly normal steps to overcome massive immigration from Muslim countries. A two-edged sword, in fact. Muslims hate Jews more than they hate Christians, and that's pushing it. The whole idea of a foreigner making new laws in our name is disgusting and would only happen in the United Kingdom. Proof of pudding, I think. Russell Brand wins Foot-in-Mouth Award for worst use of English language. The comedian and self-styled revolutionary Russell Brand has been given an award from the Plain English Campaign, PEC, for being incomprehensible. The Foot-in-Mouth Award celebrates the public figure who is hardest to understand due to their sloppy English. The citation from PEC said, "We struggle to make sense of most of his comments. We wonder if that might be due to him being more worried about self-promotion than about making sense," although they did claim to admire his interest in democratic debate. In previous years, winners have been given the award for one particular comment that made little sense, but this year the PEC gave numerous examples to prove their point. They were, and I quote, "The internal mayhem I'm feeling is spilling out everywhere. I loved it. I felt very connected to activism, particularly activism that feels loaded with potential, not the oppositional activism that seems like there's a stasis around it, earnestly sincere but a monolith equal to the establishment." There's more. "I find it, capitalism, hard to understand. It obfuscates truth, and I think an economic ideology is oppositional to the spiritual ideologies that are what we need to adopt if we're to save our planet and humankind. Capitalism, the economic arm of the individualism and materialism ideologies that keep us framed in a narrow bandwidth of consciousness, prevents us from seeing that all we're connected." And he's still not finished. This attitude of churlish indifference seems like nerdish deference contrasted with the belligerent antipathy of the indigenous farm folk who regard the hippy-dippy interlopers, the denizens of the shimmering tit temples, as one phase step away from transvestites. Phew, what a load of bollocks. The award comes in a bad week for Brand, who was widely attacked for complaining about the super rich pushing up rents in London before being exposed for renting a £2.3 million house himself. When he was asked how much his house was worth by Channel 4, he became visibly angry at the journalist. Well, at 8, whilst reading Brand's drivel out, I am reminded he is a scion of the state-educated lefty liberals, of which we have so many around now. Pure idiocy out of pure venom sums it up, and he ain't that funny either. British volunteers ground campaign against ISIS like trench warfare. A pair of British former soldiers fighting against jihadis in Syria have spoken out about their experience, saying of their decision to confront terrorism. I'm a firm believer that if you want to do something, you have to do it, not talk about it. James Hughes, 26, one of the former squaddies who flew to Turkey and then continued overland, said of their motivation, which was inspired by the revulsion at the Islamic State's execution of aid worker Alan Henning, I wanted to help. The situation in England is getting bad in terms of the support IS get. The world needs to open its eyes to the threat they pose. Breitbart London has previously reported on the pair, both veterans who travelled out to Syria a fortnight ago, but they have now spoken to the Sun newspaper, describing the conditions they have found in the country so far. One of the most remarkable reports is the state of war between the Kurdish forces they have joined and the Islamic State jihadists they oppose, which they describe as being like the Great War-style trench warfare. Jamie Reid, 24, formerly of 2nd Battalion, the Duke of Lancaster's regiment, described the stalemate found in an absence of proper military leadership. Forget about any Western tactics. There's no reconnaissance, no intelligence work done and no logistics. The first thing we did was to push forward into no man's land and put an observation post there. A lot of the fighting has been long range with AK-47s and PK machine guns and sniper rifles. IS don't want to approach us and the YPG are content with holding the line. I think the YPG will eventually gain ground, but they are waiting on US or coalition airstrikes. Reid apparently believes that with a small group of British troops trained in modern tactics and leadership, the Islamic State could be stopped in its tracks. One way the trenches of Syria are unlike those of northern France in the 1914-18 war, however, is the food. While many British soldiers could then have expected to eat significantly better than they did at home, enjoying a pound of red meat a day, food is so scarce in the arid desert over which they're fighting, Hughes remarked, some dudes suffered malnutrition. European news. French homeless in Marseille forced to wear yellow triangles. The city of Marseille has been blasted for using Nazi-era tactics to identify its homeless population by issuing them with ID cards adorned with a yellow triangle. The cards detail their health issues and will be worn visibly. Authorities in France's second largest city have come under fire for issuing its homeless with ID cards that detail their health issues. Human rights groups and government ministers have slammed the yellow triangle cards, comparing to the Nazi-era Star of David that was sewn onto Jewish people's clothes during the Holocaust. This is scandalous, it's stigmatising, Christopher Louis, president of the homeless charity Collectif Mort de la Rue, told the Local. Wearing something that shows the whole world what illness you have is not only discriminating, but it also breaches all medical confidentiality, he said, adding that the symbolism in the design of the card is outrageous. Being identified by either a star or a triangle is horrific, he said. In their defence, authorities say the purpose is to help health workers quickly come to the aid of a homeless person who has fallen ill or is in need of aid. For its part, Marseille Town Hall has been outraged by the criticism it has endured by issuing the card that saves lives. In a statement given to the Local, one of Marseille's deputy mayor, Xavier May, said, I'm appalled by the absurd controversy surrounding this help card distributed by SAMU, Social Media Emergency Service. The reaction not only questions the necessity of a scheme for homeless people, but also the commitment of the city, the SAMU and volunteers to come to the aid of those who need it most. I can't charge my iPod, French jihadists complain about life in Islamic State. A series of messages sent by French jihadi fighters who have travelled to Syria reveal they are not as tough as they thought they might be. The An Nahar website reports, and some are bored because they're being treated as dogs' bodies. French newspaper Le Figaro published a selection of these missives which show that many perhaps did not realise that the route they were taking was very much one way. I'm fed up to the back teeth. My iPod no longer works out here. I've got to come home, one read. But while new fighters are being welcomed, particularly those from the West, who are ideal for use in the propaganda messages, deserters are executed instantly. This was the case for one Frenchman who was rumoured to have been beheaded when he explained to the Emir that he wanted to go back home. It might be a volunteer force when you get there, but that's no rest and relaxation between tours of duty as legitimate soldiers have. For some, the fear is about dying. It's only when they join other militants in the desert they decide that being a martyr isn't all it's cracked up to be. But for others, it's being sent to the front line without any military training. According to the report, some of the recruits so far have just been made to do the washing up. But the report also highlighted that some think they can come home and carry on with life where they left it. I've hardly done anything but hand out clothes and food. I've also cleaned weapons and moved the bodies of killed fighters. Winter is beginning, it's starting to get tough, one wrote, appealing for clemency from their government. They hope that as long as they haven't killed anyone, they'll be let off. But for France, that's not how it works. If people join IS and return, they will be arrested, as 76 of the 100 returnees have been so far. World at 8. No doubt Britain will take them back and look after them, poor babies. When they aren't chopping off heads of Christians, they're rather a loss, aren't they? Poor souls. Perhaps paradise will look even more attractive now. Sweden's right-wing anti-Muslim immigration party's actions could cause demise of leftist government. Sweden's leftist minority government is in crisis after a revolt of right-wing Sweden Democrats, which other parties oppose because of its strong anti-Muslim immigrant stand. Sweden Democrats' aim is to force the collapse of the government by siding with the centre-right opposition in the budget vote. The Guardian, anti-Muslim immigration Sweden Democrats force governments to call for new elections after gaining decisive victory by voting with opposition. Sweden's far right plunged the country into unprecedented political upheaval on Wednesday by forcing the government to gamble on fresh elections in the spring after the centre-left coalition failed to push through its budget. The anti-immigrant Sweden Democrats, the country's third largest party with 13% of the vote, portrayed the new elections in March as a de facto referendum on immigration, currently at near record highs as refugees flee conflict in Syria, Iraq and Somalia. We will focus entirely on the issue, said Mattias Karlsson, the Sweden Democrats' parliamentary group leader. The right wing forced the crisis to a head when they broke with established tradition and voted with the centre-right opposition instead of abstaining after their own budget proposal had fallen, ensuring the government's defeat on this key legislation. In bitter remarks aimed at the centre-right, who had refused to compromise, Prime Minister Stefan Löfven admitted the Sweden Democrats now had a veto over Swedish politics, leaving him no choice but to call elections just 6 months after the country went to the polls in September. World at 8. One day the politicians will realise that the right wing has all the answers needed. Tough but fair. Who would you rather live under? A right-wing government or state dedicated to your country and its people, or a tumbleful of liberals welcoming foreign colonisation and making you pay for it? I know which side I'm on. World News. Straight-talking Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott has criticised a campaign to de-genderise Christmas, saying organisers should just let boys be boys and let girls be girls. A number of Australians have come out in support of the campaign to de-gender Christmas gift-giving, including humanities academics and Green Party spokesman Larissa Waters. When asked about his opinion on the campaign, Abbott, who is already cultivating an international reputation for traditional Conservative principles, told local station Channel 9, "I certainly don't believe in that kind of political correctness. Let boys be boys, let girls be girls. That's always been my philosophy, and above all else let parents do what they think is the best interests of their children. The campaign to end natural gender classifications, one of many in Anglosphere countries around the world, is run by Play Unlimited, an Australian pressure group which is calling on parents to take a stand against gendered marketing. No Gender December and its parent group campaigns under slogans such as "Stereotypes don't belong under my tree," "Boys need feminism too," and "No bullying under the rainbow." World at 8. I've never heard so much crap in all my life. Boys should be boys and girls should be girls. I played with forts and farms and never played with dolls. However, I am female and I've lived my life as one. So take the eyes off the kids and let them be themselves, without all the liberal homosexuality brigade putting their oars in. Pity there isn't a movement to bring back Christ into Christmas. Australia. Now this is what I call some serious vandalism at proposed mosque site. Vandals have caused an estimated $50,000 worth of damage to a proposed mosque site in Padstow in southwest Sydney. The 6,000 square metre industrial site on Enterprise Avenue has become the target of anti-Muslim groups as the factory has been peppered with anti-Islam hate stickers. Maybe it's time to find a different location. I hear there are 56 other countries that would be more suitable. Oh, I like this guy. Sheikh Shadi Absulaiman from Umar said the incidents were disheartening. Unfortunately, we had a few incidents on that site, a break and enter, vandalism and anti-Islamic stickers stuck on the place, and we're very upset to hear that, he said. It was very saddening and disheartening to see that some of the local members were unhappy with the presence of the Umar in Padstow. It's very unfortunate that the religion has been dragged into this Islamophobia and this backlash within the Padstow community. The United Muslims of Australia, UMA, purchased the site in July this year in the hope of turning it into a mosque and multi-purpose community centre. UMA estimated the damage will cost about $50,000 to repair due to severe damage to electrical systems. The place has been ransacked. They've gone right through and ripped out all the electrical, UMA operations officer Mohammed Karouche said. They've ripped out all the power, electricity and generators. They've taken the nuts and bolts out of everything and probably caused about $50,000 worth of damage. Well, it ain't wonderful. I'd pay for this to continue. A great pity we lacked the balls in this country when they first started building here. Thought for the day. The Treaty of Versailles, again. If you compare this country to pre-war Germany, we might appear to be better off than the average German citizen of that time, but you have to realise that the cost of living at the end of the Weimar Republic was up in the stratosphere, and ours is still rising, but has been kept well below those awful times, because the UK has been borrowing money on a huge scale for the last 25 years. This trend was definitely upwardly mobile during the Blair years, as I quote. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the national debt dropped in relative terms, falling to 29% of GDP by 2002. In 1997, the Labour government of Tony Blair had inherited a PSNCR of approximately $5 billion per annum. But by sticking to the parsimonious spending plans of the outgoing Conservative government, this would gradually turn into a modest budget surplus. During the spending review of 2000, Labour began to pursue a looser fiscal policy, and by 2002, annual borrowing had reached $20 billion. The PSNCR continued to increase despite sustained economic growth, increasing to 37% of GDP in 2007. This was due to extra government borrowing largely caused by increased spending on health, education and social security benefits. Since 2008, when the British economy slowed down sharply and fell into recession, the national debt has risen dramatically, mainly caused by increased spending on welfare benefits, bank bailouts and a significant drop in receipts from stamp duty and income tax. Now, of course, the similarity I am directly referring to is the difference in the haves and the have-nots, and I mean a difference in ethnicity for the most part. The reduction in stamp duty will help our Asian and immigrant friends purchase more cheap houses en masse, as more people will be selling to make a small profit. And the long-distance fares kids exclusion will benefit the ones who have homes back home or relatives they regularly fly over to see. Great, but what about us, the white middle class and ageing population? The hangovers from years gone by who have paid in and worked most of their lives in this country, the ones who have not gone abroad to retire and who are, in a sense, stuck. I don't see the budget or any government helping our increasing number of white homeless who have lost jobs and thus homes. In a programme last night there was a poor single parent guy with 2 small children trying to make a home in one room of a built-to-measure boarding house, which probably gets huge amounts of money from the local Salford Council, and I would bet $1 that it is Asian owned. The guy was of course white and doesn't qualify for a small council flat or house near his kids' schools. He is in temporary accommodation which can last only a limited amount of time. If I'd had the money I would have sent him enough to rent a place, because there, but for the grace of God, go a great many people in this country now. In days of old he would have been able to get a small place on an estate, been able to get a job driving lorries and become more self-sufficient, but now He cannot. Everything is against him. Our homeless are more important than Syrian refugees or immigrants, whether from inside or outside the EU. Our homeless deserve a voice, especially when you can land on this island having paid no taxes and get benefits, houses, cars, mobile phones and you name it. But be a poor white family and you'll get nothing or very little, and it will not be for very long. Compared to the Muslim families who get houses which are kitted out by the local councils on whom their fellow Muslims sit to suit that religion, their disabled are catered for, they get NHS care regardless of not ever paying in, and their kids are educated free. This is not right. It wouldn't be right in another country, and the UN would be down on whatever government was incumbent post-haste with yells of democracy and ethnicities. Not here. We Brits have allowed ourselves to be bought off with media hype and trash. People think that if we keep quiet and just ignore what is going on, there'll be peace and no race or religious wars. Not so. This British worm has just not turned yet. And to be fair, in many areas, it would do no good on a small scale as they're overrun with ethnic communities anyway. In a cooking programme I watch when not busy, which is rarely, I noticed of late up in Manchester, out of the 5 competitors 2 are Muslim girls, and certainly their parents' homes are several cuts above the one room with the one white guy and 2 kids in it. They might have worked hard, but I doubt it. Worked smart, yes. But in doing so, now we have in this country the scenario that set off the Third Reich. The Jews had been fairly safe in Germany for nearly 800 years, and it was Russia and Poland during the pogroms with monotonous regularity. However, during the Weimar Republic, many Jews turned to the communist creed, and the rich Jews took over most of the banking, businesses as well as the entertainment business, and brought out their German neighbours en masse. And it was this primarily which drove the final solution. As the ordinary German in the street became poorer, the Jews became, for the most part, wealthier. Now we have the same situation going on in the UK and throughout Europe. Only it's taken just 50 years, not 800 years, and a world war to do it. I never thought I would live in a country where people drove cars and had huge houses and businesses and were not, for the most part, English, with all the trappings of the much despised English upper classes. But I do, and you do. Not all homeless are blameless, admittedly, but until we sort out giving to our own to help them, rather than giving to strangers to colonise us, this country will not be great again. It will just be a dormitory town for Lahore, Medina or Beijing. I don't believe that our migrants have nowhere else to go. 40 years ago they were born somewhere into a culture more suited to them than ours, but without the benefits and opportunities. For the last 30 years British jobs have been advertised in Poland and India, with homes available when they come over en masse with all their breeding facilities. We have never helped our own, and without a doubt the similarity to the Treaty of Versailles equalling the EU and Brussels cannot be overlooked, and neither can the simple method of just looking around and noting who has what and who hasn't. And apart from anything else, we've sacrificed our own children on this altar and made them second-class citizens, and to cap it all, we're even dumbing down our Christian Christmas to accommodate these parasites. Are we mad, or is our political elite completely balmy? They're spending billions of pounds in building houses and roads, and what for? Our elderly and our homeless? No. We are not going to benefit from any of this, but Mr. Mohammed down the road's kids might well. And finally, animal jokes. Bless. This has to be one of the best single ads ever printed. It's reported to have been listed in the Cornish Guardian. Single black female seeks male companionship. Ethnicity unimportant. I'm a very good girl who loves to play. I love long walks in the woods, riding in your pickup truck, hunting, camping and fishing trips. Cosy winter nights lying by the fire. Candlelit dinners will have me eating out of your hand. I'll be at the front door when you get home from work, wearing only what nature gave me. Call 01272 6420 and ask for Annie, and I'll be waiting. Over 150 men found themselves talking to the Truro RSPCA, and the picture of Annie, a small black labby, is just perfect. And a lady goes to her priest one day and tells him, "Father, I have a problem. I have 2 female parrots, but they only know to say one thing." "What do they say?" the priest asked. "They say, 'Hi, we're hookers. Do you want to have some fun?' "That's obscene," the priest exclaimed. Then he thought for a moment. "You know," he said, "I may have a solution to your problem. I have 2 male talking parrots, which I have taught to pray and read the Bible. Bring your 2 parrots over to my house and we'll put them in the cage with Francis and Peter. My parrots can teach your parrots to pray and to worship. And your parrots are sure to stop saying that phrase in no time." "Thank you," the woman responded. "This may well be the solution." The next day she brought her female parrots to the priest's house. As he ushered her in, she saw his 2 male parrots were inside their cage, holding their rosary beads and praying. Impressed, she walked over and placed her parrots in with them. After a few minutes, the female parrots cried out in unison, "Hi, we're hookers! Do you want to have some fun?" There was a stunned silence. One male parrot looked over at the other male parrot and says, "Put the beads away, Frank. Our prayers have been answered." You've been listening to The World at 8, and I'm Lynn Mozart, and I and the team at World at 8 and Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and a very safe weekend. Site. Thought for the day, the Treaty of Versailles yet again, and finally animal jokes. UK news. Leicester City Council is banning all Israeli goods. The City Council of Leicester, the 10th largest city in the United Kingdom, has established a ban on all Israeli goods in the city, despite the fact that it is controlled by Britain's main opposition party Labour, who, according to party leader Ed Miliband, have insisted that they are opposed to boycotting. With a population of 330,000 citizens, 93,000 of whom are which.
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the #1 in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday, 5th of December 2014. Leicester City Council is banning all Israeli goods. Russell Brand wins Foot in Mouth Award for worst use of English language. British volunteers ground campaign against ISIS like trench warfare. French homeless in Marseille forced to wear yellow triangles. I can't charge my iPod. French jihadists complain about life in Islamic State. Sweden's right-wing anti-Muslim immigration party's actions could cause demise of leftist government. Australian PM blasts No Gender December. Australia, now that is what I call some serious vandalism at proposed mosque November 13th. The motion was founded on the statement that Leicester is renowned for its tolerance, diversity, unity and its strong stance against all forms of discrimination, which it noted enables different communities to live together. While the motion is clearly a slap to Israel's face, it's also one to the face of Miliband, who represents the city as a Labour spokesman and has frequently established that Labour does not support boycotts. They are not the answer and do not progress the cause of peace or help foster negotiations and dialogue. World at 8. And of course Miliband is the Jew himself, first or second generation immigrants from Pakistan, India and or Bangladesh. This can unfortunately be only deemed as a win for the BDS movement against Israel and a fearful premonition of what can transpire in other British cities around the UK. Some 60,000 of Leicester's residents, 19%, are Muslim. Currently just 295 Jews live in the area, representing a meagre 0.1% of the population. The resolution to ban all Israeli goods was proposed by Councillor Mohammed Daywood and approved by City Council on